Real estate investment practice problem using Excel. Shared appreciation mortgage part 1. Get ready because we're raising the stakes with real estate. Here we are in our Excel worksheet. If you have access to the Excel worksheet, would like to follow along, note that there are 3 tabs on down below: example, practice, and blank. Let's take a look at them now, starting with the example tab, in essence being an answer key. Whenever we're moving away from the standard loan structure, we want to compare and contrast to it, that being the 30-year fixed in this case. That's our starting point, initial rate. The 10% payment calculation using the PMT function down below, the amortization table then constructed from it. We'll then take that and look in our new thing this time, the new loan structure, that being the shared appreciation loan. General concept being that the lender takes a piece of the appreciation in the property in exchange for more favorable terms. So obviously, if we're the borrower, we want lower payment and so on and so forth. We want more favorable terms, smaller interest rate. Then possibly we could do that in exchange for the lender getting some component of the appreciation in the property. That's the general idea of it. Now, this is a less standardized structure, and of course, you can see different variations that could take place in this kind of structure. In other words, you might want to determine, or you would want to determine, how long the property will be held before the lender wants to get a piece of basically the appreciation in it. Do you have to sell it at that point in time? Is there some way, if you wanted to stay in the property or keep the property at some point in time, does the lender want to get paid that appreciation based on an appraisal at some point in the future? What would happen if the property actually goes down in value? Are you somehow responsible to the lender in some way, shape, or form in that event? So there's a lot of different scenarios or things to basically consider, but the basic concept of it is fairly straightforward, meaning more favorable terms to the borrower, lower interest rate, lower payments generally, in exchange for the lender getting a piece of the appreciation in the property. So here's going to be our scenario. We'll go over in more detail when we work through the problem. We'll make our amortization table from it. We'll consider what would happen at the point of sale, given the fact that we'd have to sell and then give the lender their appreciated portion at some point. Then we'll take a look at our IRR calculations. The second tab, the practice tab, will have some pre-formatted cells here, so you can work through the practice problem with a little less formatting involved in it. The third tab, our blank tab, is where we're going to get to the formatting and everything, and make a lot of it basically from scratch, from nothing, just out of the thinness of the air. So here we go. We're going to have our information, 100,000 or 110 on the loan. We're going to say the down payment is this 13.64, which is actually not an even number because we want to get to this 15,000 down. So we're getting down payment of the 15,000. And then we've got the loan. That means the loan's going to be at the 95,000. So we got the home valued at the 110. Important point. The loan at the 95,000. It's going to be a 30-year, 360 payments, 30 times 12, in other words. And then we have the 8% at the rate. So 8% at the rate, that being the rate that we're given for this shared appreciation loan. So we imagine that being possibly a better rate in this environment, whatever that environment would be at the point of this imaginary practice problem. That being better than what we could get if we did not have this shared appreciation would be the general idea. We could then calculate our payment just as we kind of normally would. We have a holding period, we're going to say, of 5 years, and that's going to be when we expect to basically sell the property. And the participation is going to be the 30%, meaning basically the lender is going to want a piece of that increase in the property over the time frame after that time frame of the 5 years in that case. Now, again, you could ask the question, okay, well, how long can I hold on to the property? Do I have some date that I need to sell the property, or is it just basically at some future point in time when I sell the property before some date that I have to then share the proceeds on it? And is there some point in time where if I wanted to hold the property, could I then hold the property and then simply pay the bank off the shared appreciation at that point in time? Those kind of questions, of course, you'd want to get straightened out in this kind of agreement as well. So that's going to be our starting points. Let's calculate our payment calculation. Same straightforward payment calculation. Negative PMT, shift 9. We're going to have the rate. The rate's going to be that 8%. We're going to divide that by 12 to get the monthly rate. Comma, number of periods is going to be up there to that 360, 30 times 12. comma, and then the present value is going to be the amount of the loan of the $95,000 and enter. There we have it. Straightforward payment calculation. Our construction of the amortization table will be straightforward as well. It's just the fact that then we're going to have this added kind of component that we're going to owe to the bank due to the appreciation in the property. So the standard appreciation table, let's go ahead and copy it over here so we don't have to build it completely from scratch. We're going to put our cursor on column C and drag on over to column I, CI. I'm going to Control C and copy that. Paste that on down on over here in column N. Let's put it in N, the skinny column. And there we go. That's our starting point. So we're going to say the new loan balance is going to be the 95. Let's make sure we're getting this 95 right there. And then we're going to adjust the payments to be this payment amount. So it's an absolute reference. So I'm going to adjust it to be that payment that we just calculated. F4 on the keyboard, $ before the L and the 9 so we can copy it all the way down. Putting our cursor back on it, double clicking on the fills handle to copy it all the way down. Then on the interest side of things, I'm going to double click on it. I want to be picking up the 8% right there. So that absolute reference ties cell B7, getting rid of that, replacing it with cell L7, and then F4 on the keyboard, $ before the L and 7, enter. Put our cursor back on that, double click on the fill handle, bringing that all the way down. So we just adjusted our table. If we go down to the bottom, getting all the way down to the bottom, we should then be at 0, indicating that things have been done the way things should be done. Things have been done the way they should be done. Okay, so that's going to be straightforward once we come up basically kind of with the terms. We're going to imagine the home appreciation then to be, for the 5 years, going to be 25% appreciation. So that means that the resale price of the home, if we were to sell it after the 5-year time period, would be the 110% up top times 25% increase, or 1, let's say brackets 1 plus that 25% increase, and enter. So that would be, we're imagining it would be worth, we'd have to sell it for after that 5 years, 137.5 at the home price. So we can then say, okay, what's going to be the balance of the loan at that point in time, which we can see in the amortization table. I can go down to 5 years and say 5 years right there would be at the 90,316. So I can just do that, which is what I would probably do most likely. But we can also do it with a calculation here. We could do a calculation on it. That calculation would be basically the present value of the remaining payments after the 5-year time period. So we could do a present value calculation equals PV, shift 9. It would be the rate. So we want the rate at the 8% divided by 12 to get the monthly rate, the number of periods. I'm going to do this thing where we get it in years first. So I'm going to say brackets. Going to pick up the 30 years minus the 5 years, which have now passed. Close up the brackets and then multiply that. That'd be 25 years left remaining after the 5 years that have been covered, times the 12 to get it on a monthly basis, comma, and then the payment is going to be the payment that we just calculated up top right there. And there we have it, and enter. Closing up the brackets, we get the 90,316. Is that what I got down here? 90,000. Yes, it is. Of course it is. I sounded a little hesitant, like I wasn't completely confident, but I was the whole time. I knew it was coming out right. So then we're going to say negative present value. So there's the 90,316. Then we can take a look at the appreciation. Now I'm really considering the appreciation we owe to the bank right now. So I'm going to say, okay, it went up by this 137.5. The property went up in value over the 110, and we owe the bank the participation of the 30%. So, and we'll do this calculation again on the side, but here's a quick recap here. We're going to say, all right, this is going to be brackets. It went up to 137.5 minus the 110 brackets, and then we're going to multiply that times the 30%, the amount of the increase that the bank wants, which is the 30%. That's what we agreed to. So we're like, all right, fine. We have to pay that off. So now we got to pay the loan off. So the total lender that we got to pay off equals the sum of the amount that we'd have to pay off at the end of the 5 years due to the loan amount and the appreciation that we agreed to give to the bank. We have to pay off the 98,566. So there we have that. Now we can also consider our effective rate, which we can also calculate basically with the IRR type of calculation. So we'll do this a couple different ways. In other words, we could try to roll the cost of this in to the effective rate. And again, to kind of know what that would be on the front end when we're picking up the loan, we'd have to make a projection as to what we believe the resale price would be. So this would be another thing which would add a level of complexity as we're kind of considering what's going to be happening in the future. So let's calculate it with our rate calculation. This equals the RATE rate. And then we're going to pick up the number of periods. We're looking at the 5 years this time, 5 years, but that's in years. So we're going to multiply it times 12 to get the number of months, 60 months, comma. The payment we calculated up here at the 697.08. So then we're going to say, comma, present value generally needs to be negative. That's going to be the loan amount, negative 95,000. And then we'll say, comma, and then we're going to add the future value. And the future value is the amount that we are going to give to the lender after taking into consideration the appreciation or the portion of it that is owed to the lender. That would give us the monthly amount. So I'm going to close it up, multiply it times 12 to get the yearly amount. We get to the 9.4. Now, again, that might be easier to see using an IRR calculation, which we'll do on the right shortly. And so another way we can kind of see some of this data is to say, okay, let's just imagine if we were to resell it in 5 years and kind of break this down in a way that might be a little bit more intuitive. So we're going to say, all right, 5 years pass. We're going to imagine we sell it, or if we don't sell it, if we owe the bank the appreciation or something, we're going to imagine where we stand, at least at that point in time. So we're going to say, all right, 5 years later, let's say we sell after, let's say 5 years. That's going to be our header. And then we're going to say, let's make this a little bit larger on this side. We're going to make this black and white. Go into the font group, making it black and white on the header. So we can do some calculations. So we'll say the sales price. Let's bring this out to the third column. We're going to assume we sell it for, because we said it appreciated to that 137.5. So we're going to sell it for 137.5. And then how much do we have to pay to the lender? Pay to lender. Now, obviously, we have the amount of the loan balance, which we can get from the amortization table. So we owe, let's put this in the middle column. We owe them the amount after 5 years. So after 5 years, we'd still have to pay off that 90,316. But we'd also have to pay them their portion of the increase in the appreciation. So let's call this appreciation to lender. It's lender, not lendor. Okay, so we can calculate that as the sales price. Sales price is going to be that 137.5 minus the cost. So we purchased it for the cost of not the loan amount, but the cost of the 110. That means, let's put an underline there, font group underline. It went up and down in value. So let's call it total appreciation is equal to the 137.5 minus the 110. And then the amount that we owe to the lender percent, which we call the participation. They're like, we're participating with you in this 30% participation. Number group percentage underlining it. So that means there's a D in the lender. Spell properly. Appreciation to lender, then the amount that we have to give the lender of the increase in the value would be equal to the 27.5 times the 30%. So that's where we got that 8,250 we got to give to the lender. Let's underline that. Font group underline. So now we got to pay the lender. Pay to lender. The amount of the loan equals the sum of the loan amount that we still owe them, and we got to pay the appreciation portion to them. That means the proceeds to us after this would not just be net of the loan amount we owe, but the amount of the appreciation percent that the lender wants. So now we'd have the 38,934. So you'd have to do some kind of calculation like this if you're thinking about holding on the property to some short, period of time to see whether or not the gain in the property would be worthwhile. You got to take into consideration that added, of course, factor of the lender taking their piece into consideration and do some kind of thing like this, meaning you'd have to figure out what the odds are that it's going to go up in value and so on and so forth into that type of calculation. So let's do that. So that looks good. That looks good. Okay, so the last thing that you might, one other way that when you're considering this kind of thing, you might try to say, hey, look, I want to shoot. Oh, let's do the IRR calculation too. The IRR, because that might be a little bit more intuitive calculation, and you can use this rate as the rate that you'd want a return on in order to do the project. That's how this thing normally works. So we're going to go to the bucket, black and white, center it. We're going to say 0, 1, 2. We'll just bring it down to 5 years, 60 payments. 5 years means 60 time frames. Right there, we're going to center that. And then cash flow, the inflow we got in terms of a loan was the $95,000, and then we're paying out the payments of the $967, taking that all the way down, and then at the end we got this kind of tricky component, because at the end we got to pay off the $90,316 like normal, the loan, plus that last payment of the $697 plus, or I'm going to say minus, but another outflow of that $8,250, the amount that we have to pay the lender over and above the loan amount because of their participation in our profits. So we're going to say there it is, the $99,263. Underline it here. If we total that up, total equals the sum of these items, summing it up. There's our cash flow, the IRR, the rate at which this series of payments would be 0 then, equals the IRR. And picking up those numbers for the IRR, closing it up, that would be on a monthly basis, number group, percent, adding some decimals. Let's make it yearly, double-clicking on it, going to the end of it, multiplying times 12. So we're at the 9.4. Once again, we basically calculated that effective rate we did there in a way that I feel might be a little bit more intuitive to look at those kind of cash flows. Now, you might be saying that IRR is often a rate at which you're saying, I need that IRR to be at some point before I accept the project. So, for example, you might say, I'm not going to do it unless I get a rate of return at 12%, for example. So let's copy this over. I'm going to put my cursor on this tab, hold down Control, left click, and drag it on over just so we have 2 blank tabs, just to give an example here. One way you could do that is you could say, okay, that means I need to kind of back in. I'd like to back into this appreciation percent. How much would it have to appreciate, in other words, given this scenario, for my effective rate to be, let's say like 15%, right? We're going to try to get this up to 15. One way you can do that, because this is a hard-coded number, and this number is dependent on some of these other factors involved, is we can use a tool called Goal Seek. So I'm going to go up top and I'm going to say, all right, let's go to the data tools. I don't even need to be on any particular cell, so I'll be on no cell down here. We're going to go to the forecast, what if analysis, Goal Seek. And we could say, all right, I would like to set this cell right there to be 12%. 12%. Sometimes it's not exact. I don't know why, but it gives you a pretty good idea. We want to set that to be 12% by changing this cell. So I want to set that cell to be hard-coded 12% by changing this cell. Excel will then use trial and error, just plug in trial and error really fast like a computer does to figure out what this number needs to be to get that number to be, what did I say? Did I say 12? Let's say, I think we're going 15% to make it 15%. So we want this cell to be 15% by changing this cell. So Excel will then go through and try to figure out what this cell would be since they're connected. And so there we have about 14.99. That's pretty close. So that means the property would have to go up by 145.65%, right, to 270,213 in order to achieve that effective rate, our rate of return. That might be a useful way to kind of use that tool because, of course, you can compare this project to other projects, and that internal rate of return gives a kind of time value of money involved in it. So if you get your, basically what you seek to be your goal that you think you can get with your money, given risk taken into risk factors and whatnot, then you can basically look at your projects and see whether they're achieving or clearing that hurdle project, and or compare different projects to determine, which ones look like they have the potential benefit for you. That's your time value of money tool. So that's another kind of tool you could put into place.